How's it going, everybody? Preacher here. Today we're going to be talking about 7 books that I think are extremely underappreciated in the fantasy, sci-fi, and horror space. Now, most of these books lean horror, but have a lot of cool fantasy elements. And I think they're going to be a great opportunity for you to dive in. If you maybe aren't into horror and you're more into fantasy, I think it's a great blend and some books that really are not talked about enough in this space. So let's dive in and get started with number 1. The first book I want to talk about is one that has been beginning to get some traction within Fantasy Booktube, and that is Sandman Slim by Richard Kadrey.
Supernatural fantasy has a new anti-hero in Sandman Slim, star of this gripping, gritty new series by Richard Kadrey. Life sucks, and then you die. Or, if you're James Stark, you spend 11 years in hell as a hitman before finally escaping, only to land back in the hell on earth that is Los Angeles. Now Stark's back and he's ready for revenge and absolution and maybe even love. But when his first stop saddles him with an abusive talking head, Stark discovers that the road to absolution and revenge is much longer than you'd expect. And both heaven and hell have their own ideas for his future. Resurrection sucks, and saving the world is worse. Darkly twisted, irreverent, and completely hilarious, Sandman Slim is the breakthrough novel by an acclaimed author, Richard Kadrey.
Now, Sandman Slim is for those of you guys who love Dresden Files. It's dark, it's gritty, it's set in the real world, and it's about this guy who you shouldn't love, but you just begin to fall in love with him as he goes on a revenge tale. Now, if you like Dresden Files and you haven't read this book, I'm telling you, you're missing out. It's really, really up that alley. Now, I think it's a little darker. I think that the titular character, Sandman Slim, is a little less likable than Dresden, but that's okay. If you haven't read this, you need to pick it up. Next up, we have the first book in a series by a pretty popular horror author, but man, I think it's one that more people should be talking about, and that is Blackbirds by Chuck Wendig.
She's foreseen hundreds of car crashes, heart attacks, strokes, and suicides. But when Miriam hitches a ride with Lewis Darling and shakes his hand, she sees that in 30 days Lewis will be murdered while he calls her name. Lewis will die because he met her, and she will be the next victim. No matter what she does, she can't save Lewis. But if she wants to stay alive, she'll have to try.
Now, Blackbirds is the first book in the Miriam Black series, and I'm telling you, if you like Monster of the Week, if you like to have an overarching narrative but with an individual story within each book of the series, this is for you. Very similar to like Supernatural or to Dresden, where it feels like you can read each book separately, but there's something bigger going on. And Miriam Black's story is so interesting, so unique, and Chuck Wendig is a master at doing what he does. If you like mystery, if you like suspense, if you like horror with some supernatural elements, you need to pick up Blackbirds by Chuck Wendig and start the Miriam Black series today. Next up, we have a book that's pretty popular in the horror world, but I think it should be more popular in fantasy booktube, and that is The Fisherman by John Langan.
In upstate New York, in the woods around Woodstock, Dutchman's Creek flows out of the Ashokan Reservoir. Steep banked and fast moving, it offers the promise of fine fishing and of something more, a possibility too fantastic to be true. When Abe and Dan, 2 widowers who have found solace in each other's company and a shared passion for fishing, hear rumors of the creek and what might be found there, the remedy to both their losses, they dismiss it as just another fish story. But soon, though, the men find themselves drawn into a tale as deep and old as the reservoir itself. It's a tale of dark pacts, of long-buried secrets, and of a mysterious figure known as Dare Fisher, the Fisherman. It will bring Abe and Dan face to face with all that they have lost and with the price they must pay to regain it.
Now, what makes The Fisherman something that should be talked about on Fantasy Booktube? Well, it's cosmic horror. It's got this big, epic world and these interlocking stories within stories that aren't just horrifying, but are epic in scope and fantastical in nature. I'm telling you, if you've never read The Fisherman by John Langan, you need to pick it up and experience it. Even if you don't love it, you need to get it. You need to read it. You need to talk about it with other people because it is one to experience. Next up is a book that is really big in the horror community and even had a movie come out, but I don't think that it's talked about enough anymore. And I think the Goodreads rating is criminally bad. And that is The Ruins by Scott Smith.
Trapped in the Mexican jungle, a group of friends stumble upon a creeping horror unlike anything they could ever imagine. Two young couples are on a lazy Mexican vacation with sun-drenched days and drunken nights, making friends with fellow tourists. When the brother of one of those friends disappears, they decide to venture into the jungle. What started out as a fun day trip slowly spirals into a nightmare when they find an ancient ruins site and the terrifying presence that lurks there.
Now, The Ruins by Scott Smith is not for everyone. If you don't like body horror, if you don't want to cringe, if you don't want to feel that tenseness of just not knowing if you want to turn the next page to see what's going to take place, it's not for you. But I'm telling you, if you want horror, if you want to feel the emotions that should come with that type of a story, there's nothing better than The Ruins. It should be talked about as one of the greatest horror stories of all time. Next up, we have a book by a really famous horror author, but no one's reading this book, and it's because his name is different on it. If you've ever read any Nick Cutter, you need to read Craig Davidson's The Saturday Night Ghost Club.
A short, irresistible, and bittersweet coming-of-age story in the vein of Stranger Things and Stand By Me, about a group of misfit kids who spend an unforgettable summer investigating local ghost stories and urban legends. Growing up in 1980s Niagara Falls, a seedy but magical and haunted place, Jake Baker spends most of his time with his Uncle Calvin, a kind but eccentric enthusiast of occult artifacts and conspiracy theories. The summer Jake turns 12, he befriends a pair of siblings new to town, and so Calvin decides to initiate them all into the Saturday Night Ghost Club. But as the summer goes on, what begins as a seemingly lighthearted project may ultimately uncover more than any of its members had imagined. With the alternating warmth and sadness of the best coming-of-age stories, the Saturday Night Ghost Club examines the haunting mutability of memory and storytelling, as well as the experiences that form the people we become.
Now, Craig Davidson is Nick Cutter's real name. It's where he usually writes his literary fiction and his mystery. And this is what this is. It's a literary fiction mystery, a coming-of-age tale. If you like Stephen King's coming-of-age work, if you like Boy's Life, man, you need to read The Saturday Night Ghost Club. It's got beautiful prose, much more lit fic than Nick Cutter's stuff, but I'm telling you, it's worth a read. The Saturday Night Ghost Club is just as good as anything that's been put out under Nick Cutter's name. Next, we have a book that could be termed a supernatural mystery thriller, but we don't really know if it's supernatural, and that's one of the coolest parts of the story. And that is Stuart Turton's The Devil and the Dark Water.
It's 1634, and Samuel Pepys, the world's greatest detective, is being transported to Amsterdam to be executed for a crime that he may or may not have committed. Traveling with him is his local bodyguard, Arent Hayes, who is determined to prove his friend innocent. But no sooner are they out to sea than devilry begins to blight the voyage. A twice-dead leper stalks the decks, strange symbols appear on the sails, and livestock is slaughtered. Then 3 passengers are marked for death, including Samuel. Could a demon be responsible for their misfortunes? With Pepys in prison, only Arent can solve a mystery that connects every passenger on board. A mystery that stretches back into their past and now threatens to sink the ship, killing everyone on board.
This book blends mystery and suspense and supernatural horror, maybe, to really give this awesome, unique story of a man who's trying to figure out why he's been accused of something that he hasn't been accused of, and then a mystery unfurls on this boat in this really cool and unique setting and a cool and unique time. I'm telling you, if you like mystery at all, if you like suspense at all, and especially if you like an author playing with this idea of is there supernatural aspects to the world or not, The Devil in the Dark Water is a must read. His other books have gotten a lot more praise, a lot more talk. This one is criminally underrated on Goodreads, especially the amount of people who have rated it. It's his best book out of the 3, in my opinion. You need to pick it up, The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. Last but definitely not least, we have an underappreciated book that's by one of the greatest authors of all time. And that is gonna be Hearts in Atlantis by Stephen King.
5 interconnected sequential narratives set in the years from 1960 to 1999. Each story is deeply rooted in the 60s, and each is haunted by the Vietnam War. In part 1, Low Men in Yellow Coats, 11-year-old Bobby Garfield discovers a world of predatory malice in his own neighborhood. He also discovers that adults are sometimes not rescuers, but the heart of the terror. In the titular story, a bunch of college kids get hooked on a card game, discover the possibility of protest, and confront their own collective heart of darkness, where laughter may be no more than the thinly disguised cry of the beast. In Blind Willie and Why We're in Vietnam, two men who grew up with Bobby in suburban Connecticut tried to fill the emptiness of the post-Vietnam era in an America which seems as hollow and haunted as their own lives. And in Heavenly Shades of Night Are Falling, the remarkable book's denouement, Bobby returns to his hometown where one final secret and the hope of redemption, his heart's desire, may wait for him. Full of danger, suspense, and heart, this book will take some readers to a place they've never been, and others to a place they've never been able to completely leave.
Now you're saying to yourself, how can Stephen King even be on this list? He's one of the most popular authors of all time. Well, it's very simple. It's because this is one of his greatest books of all time, one of his best works, and it's rarely talked about in his top book lists. Go on YouTube, look at Stephen King top lists. You're never gonna see Hearts in Atlantis, but I'm telling you, it's the best of everything that he does. It has horror, it has fantasy, it's connected to the Dark Tower multiverse, it has the slice of life coming of age that he's so well known for. If you love how he did The Green Mile, if you loved Joyland, if you loved The Body and Shawshank, man, this is perfect for you. The titular story, Hearts in Atlantis, is in that vein where you're just following college students who are growing up, learning from their mistakes and finding out about life. And I think that Stephen King does that better than he even does horror. But if you're looking for Dark Tower connections, they're there. Grab this book. I think it's underappreciated because it's technically a collection of novellas, but they're all interconnected and they work together as one story. Grab Hearts in Atlantis by Stephen King. Well, all right, that's my video. I hope you guys have gotten 7 books that you now need to go pick up from the store and check out, talk about them. Let me know if there's any books on this list that you have read and you agree, or maybe you don't. I'd also love to know down in the comments if there's any books that you think are criminally underrated within this space. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe. Also follow me on Instagram at Preacher Reads. This is a newer channel, but I hope to be doing a decent amount of content, spending some time with you guys and building up a community. Thank you guys so much and have a good day.